Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. I am back. Thank you for all the messages and things on Twitter that people posted as well, being slightly worried about me, concerned about me, where I'd been. Obviously, those who would have watched the end of the last video would have known that I was heading off on holiday. Went to Orlando for a little bit longer than we normally. We went there about 8-9 years ago before, and we did about 2 weeks. This time we added on another couple of days, so it's about 16 nights, so 16 and a half days-ish. So yeah, it was a really, really fantastic holiday. Really switched my brain off from everything, pretty much, barring having a holiday and having a rest. I say having a recharge, but as you can probably tell, I'm absolutely shattered because we had an overnight flight, and I'm trying to deliberately stay awake now until this evening so that I can. You may be watching this evening. Filming this, when am I filming this? Around 2:30-ish. I'm going to try and stay awake because such is going back into work, and the way things have worked out because of the Champions League draw, which happened literally the day I flew out. I'm flying off to Lisbon in the morning to obviously cover the game in Lisbon and the press conference tomorrow as well, which is on. It's all on. I had all the press details through from Sporting Lisbon and sent them through. So yeah, I know there was a glitch, I think, with Spurs' website while I was at the airport earlier. I suddenly saw Twitter going a bit mad about it. But yeah, it all appears to be on. And yeah, so literally very quick turnaround from holiday mode straight back to work mode, and a lot of airport time as well, clearly. So yeah, so apologies if I say anything that really makes very little sense, or I start to flag and you see me kind of looking like I'm nodding off. It is because I'm pretty much running on fumes right now. But yeah, no, I am back, and like I say, thank you to everyone that sent all the messages, thinking worried, concerned for my well-being, thinking something more heinous had happened. I even had one person ask me if I'd just stopped doing the videos altogether. No, it was just a break, and like I say, totally switched off. So I kind of got the benefit of not really. I didn't see. I was getting guesty. Rob Guest, my partner in crime, writing about Spurs. And on the podcast Golden Guest Talk Tottenham, you know, he was kind of telling me essentially like social media reactions to things like the end of the transfer window and stuff. I was properly trying to switch off. Was quite nice. I think on transfer deadline day, I literally popped on quickly because someone tagged me in something saying, "Oh, when's Alistair's tweet coming to tell us that all business is done and whatever kind of thing?" And I just replied absolutely honestly. Alistair Gold is not available right now. He's on the water rides at Volcano Bay, or on the water slides at Volcano Bay. I was saying, please leave a message after the beep, because that's exactly what I was doing. And it sounds so weird because you know what I'm like. You know what I'm like in these. You know if you've read any of my things or seen me out and about. My brain is so switched on to Spurs 24/7 to actually be so out of that bubble. And yeah, at Volcano Bay, going down water flumes, and I did for the first time one of those trapdoor slides. That was an experience where just suddenly the ground just was taken away from your feet and you just fly down. And that bit wasn't actually too bad. It was the actual slide itself, which was such a vertical one. There's just so much water in my face, I could barely see what I was doing. But I digress. I'm not going to talk about the holiday, really. It was fantastic, really enjoyable, lots of cool new stuff in it. I am going to do like a travel vloggy thing, which I think I did with Sorrento and Kefalonia before. So if anyone is interested in those, wants to just essentially me showing you around various parks and stuff in Orlando, I am going to somehow stitch together various little videos I did out there and other stuff. I have no idea when. Maybe later in the week when I'm back from Lisbon. But yeah, that will be out there. So I'm not going to bore you with that. But as you can see, I'm kind of on brand as well. Yes, it is a holiday T-shirt that was bought out there. But yeah, of course, returning to a very different UK as well. It was so strange to hear that Her Majesty the Queen had died. Because obviously in America, it's hearing the news out there is probably different to had we heard it here. Obviously, we knew she was unwell in the kind of 24 hours, even less than that beforehand. And obviously in America, there's this probably even more so than maybe, I don't know, more so. Well, it's certainly a very differently the way she's seen over there. It is with a lot of affection in America, obviously, whereas here, I'd say there is a lot of affection, but of course, as I've seen on social media in the aftermath, there are some people that just have an axe to grind and have their various opinions on the royal family and stuff like that. For me, I think I just see it in maybe a more simplistic view. It was a 96-year-old lady who lost her husband, a year or so ago. And now, sadly, after all those years, not only serving the country, but also years with him, I guess, she's obviously has died as well. And I just think it's just all very sad. It's very sad. And obviously we have a king now, which is going to be very strange. And even little things like the currency. Apparently I was reading the other day, with each different monarch, they change the direction the monarch is facing on the coin. I didn't even know so. This is them because Queen Elizabeth served for so long and put her life to being the figurehead of the country kind of thing. We've known nothing else. So yeah, it's all very sad. I think when Philip died, I watched a load of stuff at the time that was on telly about a lot of stuff about her when she was younger as well, and the things she did in the war and stuff like that. So I don't know, maybe I just saw a slightly different side to it. So maybe some of the people that aren't being particularly pleasant about an old lady dying have been. But hey, this isn't a video about anything to do with monarchy beliefs, anything like that. It was just me acknowledging that I have returned to a very different UK. Yeah, I mean, people often say that things happen while I was away. I must admit, I presumed it would be in a Spurs sense. I didn't think it would be on such a scale like that. Obviously, I'm not saying that actually that affects anything. Just in case anyone takes that the wrong way, I seriously wasn't. If anything, I'm saying that I kind of went away, and in the Spurs world, not really very much happened. Because like I said, I flew out on August the 25th, so you had a good week almost of the transfer window left. And other than outgoings, nothing really happened. So I don't know whether I've broken that that thing or not. That belief that, look, it does happen quite a bit. I'll admit that. But certainly, everyone telling me to go on holiday, it didn't really do anyone any favours, to be honest. It was a strange end to the transfer window. It was also quiet. Obviously, I haven't even touched on it yet. Obviously, there's no football this weekend in English football as well, which is an interesting one. I think I understand it completely from a respectful point of view. We've just lost the reigning monarch. So I understand that. Although I do wonder whether football in the aftermath, having seen all the other sports, decide to go in completely opposite direction and mark it with, national anthems and moments of remembrance and things like that. I do wonder whether they thought, maybe there's some point there where they thought, if we just waited a couple of hours and seen what others had done. I don't know. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer in it, to be honest. Both ways will show respect, I'm sure, in the appropriate way. But yeah. So no football this weekend, of course, to talk about. I got a bit lucky with a lot of things actually in terms of the draw and stuff like that. In terms of the Champions League draw, obviously I missed the first home game, but obviously going to get the away game as well. Nottingham Forest, I was going to miss going to the City Ground, a ground I've never been to, and then Spurs drew them in the Carabao Cup, so kind of got lucky with that. And obviously I'm not going to say I've got lucky because, somebody has died, and I'm certainly not going to say that, and the Queen of all people. But obviously I've ended up not missing the Man City away game, which I'll be honest, they're a little bit like North London derbies, especially at the Emirates for me, and that they're not really games I particularly enjoy because, especially with Man City, they are games that are just constant pressure on the Tottenham goal, and they're not very pleasant viewing if you're trying to write things about Tottenham. And obviously you do get the good results like last season, but I don't know. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about what the postponement might mean for Spurs and things like that a bit later. What you're going to get now is pretty much my fresh first thoughts on various things that have happened while I've been away. Because, like I say, I switched off. I did. I really did. I wasn't able to watch what games I wasn't able to see? I wasn't able to watch Forest or West Ham. I watched a fair chunk of Fulham. And I did manage to watch all of the Marseille game. Yeah, I've seen almost half of the game, so I can kind of give you my views on various things in that. But yeah, in terms of transfer window, I kind of knew, I could see the way it was heading towards the end, and it was very much going to be about more if they could get someone in to improve the quality of a couple of players that they were willing to let go, then they would do that, and if they couldn't, they would look again in a future window. So, the transfer window. Let's look at it kind of in nuts and bolts of it. 7 players in, which in itself is certainly up there with a good old horde of players coming in. Obviously, we know it's Ivan Perisic, Fraser Forster, Yves Bissouma, Richarlison, Clement Longley, Jed Spence, and Destiny Udogie. Been away so long, I've forgotten how to pronounce these names now. And obviously, Christian Romero made permanent as well. So heading out the door, obviously Pierluigi Gallini's loan deal came to an end. Steven Bergwijn moved on. Cameron Carter-Vickers has moved on. Tanguy Ndombele, Giovanni Lo Celso, Sergio Reguilon, Harry Winks all headed off on loan, which I'm sure isn't entirely ideal for Spurs, but hey, they got them out the doors, which is what they wanted. The likes of Dane Scarlett, Troy Parrott went off on loan. Both very good moves for them, they're proving to be as well. Kian Atete is left, obviously, which is a sad one. I really do think he's going to be very, very good. So he's headed off. And, of course, Jack Clark. Jack Clark has headed off as well permanently after his time. So there's 2 sides to look at the transfer window. There are. There's one side to looking at it is that it was a transfer window like no other for Tottenham because they got everything done swiftly. The bulk of stuff they needed to do, they got done swiftly, early in the window. They improved the quality and the depth of their squad as well. And most of the business was pretty much done before second, third friendly. So Antonio Conte had a lot of time to work with the players and really start to stamp his kind of mark on them. And perhaps, I think probably more than perhaps, that's why you're seeing a lot of them adapt quite quickly to the Premier League because of that preparation period that they've had. We'll talk about them when we talk about the matches, but I do think, the likes of Perisic and Longley have come in and looked very bright, in their early games as well. And obviously Richarlison he knows what the Premier League is all about, but I just like the way he's adapted to Tottenham very quickly as well. So the weird thing about them doing the business that way round is, of course, it's the flip side to what we're used to. We're used to Tottenham not really doing much at all in the early months, getting all angry about it, the fans that is, sometimes us as journalists because we haven't got much to write about. And in this situation, Conte, if they'd done it the other way around, Conte would have been demanding signings, clearly getting very annoyed. But then maybe if they'd done it in their normal way, you'd have had this weird flip way round of, let's say they signed Richarlison and Bissouma in the last few days of the transfer window. Maybe psychologically the fans would be like, they're terrific. They're really 2 really good signings. That was really good. The transfer window ended really well. I'm not saying everyone, I'm sure there would have been a fair few people that still will have evaluated over the course of it. I just think psychologically, it was almost because it was all done so early. It's strange. And hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say. Is that in this very knackered, tired state, I just wonder whether the excitement was kind of all done early on, instead of having that transfer deadline day excitement of a player coming in. You had Kulusevski and Bentancur obviously in January came in that way. I just wonder whether that changed people's mood slightly, maybe, because those final days there was no real incoming action taking place. And they kind of saw that as, it's ruined the window kind of thing. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way to look at it, which I also agree with, I do agree with a big old element of what I was saying just there, but I also do agree with, as always, and I think all managers are the same, I think more still could have been done, of course. When you've got players like Brian Hill who clearly wanted to go. I saw a couple of days after his Instagram story, I think Guesty did something. Someone did it in the story, I saw, we know he wanted, it's no secret, he wanted to go and play regular football. And I'm sure Japhet Tanganga was exactly the same as well. So I think to have got to that stage in the window with both players being told, no, you're going to have to stay. I was talking to people around both of their situations in the kind of the final days, and just suddenly, so yes, technically, I guess I was slightly switched on to things that happened. That was more messaging rather than gauging social media and stuff like that. But yeah, and just the way those deals were suddenly like, suddenly a roadblock was put there. Because presumably Spurs couldn't find a replacement that they deemed would be good enough to kind of come in at that time. So yeah, I do agree. I think more could have been done. It sounds mad when you're saying that when there's 7 players come in, but I think I did also read Guesty's transcripts of the press conference. Conte's one post transfer window closing. And you could tell that's Conte. That's also, Jose Mourinho said very similar. You're never going to be entirely satisfied ever as a manager. You always want more. Do I think they could have spent more money? Yeah, probably. I think they could have. Obviously, a lot was made by the club of this £150 million that was being injected into things, and it was made clear that it was going to be £150 million plus any sales. I was trying to work it out. I think if we're looking at money committed, so that's the money for the fee and money for future fees as well. I think that's how clubs look at it. It's money committed, the overall thing. So you're looking at, I worked it out, it's around 128 million. So 90 million on Richarlison, Basuma, roughly. 20 million for Spence, all in. 18 million all in for Udogi. Of course, both of those would have been, I can't even remember the figures now. It's so long ago I wrote about all of those. But obviously the initial fee was lower for those. Perisic and Forster, although they're free, of course, that they would have had not inconsiderable signing on fees, things like that. That's how free agents like to be free agents, because they get more of it, as do the agents and the agents' fees and all of that sort of stuff. And of course, Christian Romero. It's a difficult one. I don't really know how that would work. Now I'm back, maybe I'll ask about that. Whether that would have been budgeted as part of last year because of exactly that. As I was saying with the others, it's technically a future fee. So do you budget it with last year? Oh, by the way, I'm not adding that Romero into the 128 million. I said that would take it up to, was it 43, 46? I'm trying to remember what it was now. So that would take it up into the 170s kind of thing. No, wait a minute. Yeah, 170s million. So I'm not adding Romero into that because I don't think that's really right. Although, like I say, whether the club do budget it for this summer because it was a loan deal last season, so it's a permanent this season, I don't know. I'm not trying to, re-say that their side of the. Oh, I'm so tired. I'm sorry. I'm already stumbling. This is what no sleep for 36 hours does to you, maybe more than that now. And of course, you do got to add in, they did bring a little bit of money. I do think the unwanted quartet, as we call them, going out on loan didn't really help them much in that sense, transfer wise. Of course, they're getting them off the wages, so that's a little bit, but money wise, you're getting Steven Bergwijn, you're getting a bit there. Cameron Carter-Vickers, you're getting a little bit there, which could eventually be 10 million or so. No, it was 10 million. Jack Clark, pretty much nothing to begin with, but that could be 10 million again. So I don't know how it works. I'm not a financial man, so I don't know whether, can you offset the here's what we might get with them with here's what we might have to pay for the others. I don't know how it all works. So yeah. So definitely they haven't spent the full 150 million in that respect, unless you're counting agent. I'd be interested to see when the financial accounts come out what went on agents' fees, what went on signing on fees. It may have, after all of that, been closer to the 150 million. But like I said, it's not. It's one of those where I'm sure. Guesty was telling me there was a fair bit of anger about the 150 million stuff on Twitter. Actually, I know there was, because there was a couple of people getting really angry with me. As if I was the one that didn't spend the money or something. I saw that. Yeah, no, I did see that because Twitter's a funny place. Yes, it's like it was my fault. I shouldn't have used the word war chest. That was my downfall. I shouldn't have used the word war chest. But hey, I don't know, 128 million spent is it's not inconsiderable. And Spurs did bring in 7 players, albeit one's gone back to Udinese. And looking a prospect, you doggy, my word. I saw some of his the highlight reels from his early games in Serie A this season. He is going to be a player next season. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what do we consider a war chest? You know, is it 128 million or so? Is it 150 million? Is it 200 million? Look, Conte's probably looked down the road or across the capital, and he's looked at what Chelsea have done. Chelsea have just had an absolutely mad transfer window where they kind of weren't doing too much and then just absolutely started going for you. It was like a little brim. It was like, I want that one kind of thing. And just absolutely going for it. Was they spent something like 300 million? I do wonder whether Conte looked at his old club and I saw his quotes, like I say, in his press conference where he seemed to be really indicating that, Spurs are still a way behind. But I guess he did also caveat that with, I did always say it was going to take a few transfer windows. They've only had 2 so far. And to be fair, they've brought in, 9 players in those 2 transfer windows. So Fabio Paratici has been working away to improve that squad. And this is the key for me. I don't think you can say it's a perfect transfer window at all. I don't think you can say it's an amazing transfer window. I think you could go as far as say it's a good transfer window. I think it has to be because the squad compared to last season is much better for me. It is. It's got much better competition in a lot of areas. Could they have done more? Of course they could have. I guess thinking about the Chelsea thing, they could look at that. You could look at it and say, "Oh yeah, they spent 300 million," and then the manager's gone. The guy that won the Champions League a couple of seasons ago is already gone after a few games. But yeah, I think there's been more planning overall in this window than many of the summer ones I've seen before. I feel like that's a big plus. I feel there's a lot of cohesion between synergy, if we're going to use marketing jargon or jargon in the tech speak they use, between manager and the club. I think there's more of that. Certainly Perisic coming straight in through the doors, Richarlison, Bissouma, players that he really wanted as well. Spence obviously is one who the club feel will fit both Conte and the club, and Conte's made it very clear. The club wanted Jed Spence, and I still believe. I was told this very clearly that the scouting staff really Spence wasn't a player that Spurs would have bought under any different manager. He just ticks every box that Conte wants in a wing back. So I just feel, and I will maintain this until I'm proved otherwise, that when Spence gets his chance, he will take it. He'll be so ready and prepared for it that I think he will take it. And like I say, I just feel his skill set ticks every box Conte wants. And Conte, I'm sure there's a little bit of posturing from Antonio. He does that. I'm sure there is a little bit of that as well. And kind of making it clear, this is your player kind of thing. But also, I said it a million times, he would not sign off a deal unless he believed in that player as well. And Paratici really likes Spence. He would have been feeding a lot of information back to him as well. And yeah, so I do think the deals that have been done, I think, are all good ones. I really do. I think if they're either for the bulk of them for the now. There's a lot of older players in there that Spurs wouldn't normally go for. And I think where they've spent the money, they've spent it in the right ways. I think Bissouma will be class, just got to adapt. Richarlison is already proving to be brilliant. We're going to have a little chat about him in a bit. I just feel the whole situation with Tanganga and Hill was quite interesting towards the end. With deals quite advanced for both of them. With Hill... Was it Valencia, wasn't it? It was going on to, again, Japhet Tanganga in Milan, very interested in them, although there was still some and over obligations to buy and options to buy and things like that. But, suppose you look at it and you look at someone like Dan James at Leeds, and obviously he came into the frame kind of later on. And I do wonder whether a lot of it was to do with his homegrown switch. If you weren't aware, UEFA kind of brought out a new rule that pretty much none of us were aware of, which only affects a small portion of players, but it does help Tottenham in that it now seems that the players who play for Welsh clubs within English competition, so Swansea and Cardiff, are now able to be registered as homegrown, which is a big thing for certainly Ben Davies, especially. It would have really helped Joe Rodon as well had he been around, but obviously he's at Rennes doing very well for himself. Although I haven't kept up on that since I've been away. I saw he scored a goal. That was powered in was it a header, I think, in my early days when I was away. But yes, obviously it's helped them, and I do wonder whether Dan James, who wasn't a homegrown player for Man United when he was there in their European squads, now would have been. So perhaps that was a potential one they were looking at. Like I think I said before, that Paratici, again, another player he really likes, so maybe that had come into their thinking. But if I'm going to say hand on heart, do I believe Dan James is a better player than Bryan Hill? I'd probably go to say I'd be quite happy to keep Bryan Hill. And I do, if he gets the opportunities, I do think he's a very talented young player. I think it's obviously just the physical aspect. I sound like Conte there. Physical aspect, tactical aspect, numerical aspect. He likes his aspects. I like Bryan Hill. I do. You'll know that if you've watched my videos. I think he will come good. I still think he'll probably end up going on loan in January if he isn't getting the game time he wants. Although obviously for him, it probably comes too late because he probably had plans or hopes to try and get into that World Cup squad. But yeah, would I have chosen to keep him over Dan James? Probably. And I think with Dan James, maybe there would be a thought with the pace that he's got that maybe they could have converted him into a wing back. We know Conte loves to do that with his wingers. He kind of sees them as the ideal wing back mould, I guess it is. Just you teach them the defending, but you can't maybe teach defensive fullbacks to attack. Perhaps maybe the way that's how he looks at it. So yeah, the benefit of obviously of Ben Davies being able to be homegrown is that Pape Matar Sarr doesn't miss out on the Champions League squad now. It means everyone's fitted in there, which is quite nice and puts a nice little bow on top of it all. But yeah, you know what? I get that some people towards the end were a little bit angry about it because they felt it would be a lot more spent. And I do feel the areas they probably compromised slightly on towards the end was, obviously, we know they wanted Alessandro Bastoni at the start of the window as he was their top target. With Josko Gvardiol as well for that left side of the back three. That obviously didn't happen for different reasons. Bastoni because he just didn't want to leave Inter and Inter didn't want to sell him in the end. And with Gvardiol as well, it even looked like City were going to go in there with a huge bid, and then he signed a new deal with Leipzig as well while I was away. So you could see there were two players that just weren't really available in the market. I think Spurs just got to a point where they just thought, okay, maybe we'll have a look at this again next year. Maybe for now, we've got Clement Longley, who's very experienced. Both Paratici and Conte like him, and he can do a job playing on the left of the back three, and he can also play through the centre as well. We've already seen, I think, his ability to use the ball really means I think he can play that Dyer playmaker role quite well, or quarterback kind of sweeper role in the middle. So yeah, they went for that. It's a loan, obviously, without an option to buy. So it very much is a deal, which pretty much exactly says what I was saying there. Is let's get through the season, see where we are next summer. If Longley absolutely smashes it, then we look to keep him. But we also have a little look to see probably what's happening with Bastoni. I think we know what's probably going to happen with Gvardiol. It looks like Man City will probably try and come straight back in there for him, or who knows? He's so young; he might want to remain at Leipzig. I think that's the key thing with some of these players, that we just always assume that money wins the day. Just bid a silly amount of money, the club will accept it. Bid give him huge wages, he'll want to come. It doesn't always work like that. Sometimes players just really are happy where they are. I think you've seen that at Spurs, like Emerson Royale is so happy at Spurs, and I don't really think that he was or his agent were really entertaining kind of moves at all, which obviously made it more difficult for Spurs to kind of drum up interest in him as well if they were looking to sell him, which we know at the start of the window. I think they were certainly trying to. So yeah, so there's that position. I still believe that. I think Brian Hill should have been allowed to go out on loan to certainly help his World Cup chances and his development and get game time. But I do agree with the fact I think a better player or a player who could have made a bigger instant impact should have come in. I don't think that would have been Dan James for me. It's just a personal opinion. Adama Traore, of course, was linked again as always, and we know Pratic's love for Adama. Personally, I don't know. I like Alan St. Maximin, but I just think it would have been so difficult to get him away from there as well. And he also seems very happy at Newcastle right now. But yeah, there are two areas for me that I think maybe, I know some people will point to having a creative central midfielder that they might have perhaps need, someone that could play either deeper or further up, but those kind of players have been bombed out by Conte. Lo Celso and Ndombele have gone. And I can say this, until I'm blue in the face, but the Conte style appears to be you create down the flanks. That's where it comes from. He does often go for two more, solid, hard-working, engine room kind of midfielders. I don't think that's any coincidence that now Spurs have four of those. And Skippy, Bentancur, Basuma, Højbjerg, and all of them, he wants them to be involved in the attacking process as well. And I think you're seeing that with Højbjerg. We'll have a little chat about him in a bit as well. I think you're seeing him chip in a lot more offensively as well. But creatively, I think most of it comes down those flanks. And that's probably why you'd have to get a player who is versatile enough to play in a fair few roles to really... It's kind of one of those where I just wonder where that's a position where we, the fans, and myself as a reporter, kind of felt Spurs needed a player, but maybe Spurs themselves were a bit, obviously we know they like James Maddison as well. He probably could have fitted both roles, but I think it more so would have been, let's get a player who can play out wide, but also if we switch to a 3-5-2, can come in into a deeper role and affect the game that way. So of course there could have been more done. Of course they could have done. There always is, but like I say, when I first read Conte's early quotes, when I saw them coming out in Guessie's transcript, it was more like, he actually does seem a little bit peed off at this. He looks a little bit like, more should have been done, and kind of accepting that Spurs did to the limit that they can do all this sort of stuff. But then as the quotes went on, you kind of sensed it was more of a, this is a project kind of thing. There's more. This isn't going to need another window. And to be fair to him, this was what he was saying, during the window and before the window as well. Something like, you'd be mad if you think that Spurs squad can be you can close that gap with two transfer windows. And, and he's right. But I do think, I think they've taken positive steps. I think that's the key thing to do it. Have they lavished lots and lots and lots and lots of money? No. But like I say, it's awkward. This 128 million figure, I must stress that is with add-ons. So it's not like I'm saying they've spent that amount of money right now. And of course, with any deal, most deals are structured as they are anyway. But I would be, I'd be intrigued to know what signing on fees and agent fees are. And we will see that. But we've got to wait for the next financial results, annoyingly, to actually see how much all of that is. But other good news, Alfie Devine signed big new long-term contract. That's fantastic for him. I was there watching the under-21s game the night he got his hamstring injury and it kind of scuppered any loan move for him. He was so gutted. And everyone was gutted for him as well. You could see that. Wayne Burnett, the under-21s manager, he looked kind of really upset for him or disappointed for him as well. So that's great news, though, that he's signed this big new deal. It shows that he believes his future's at Spurs. It shows that Spurs always felt his future was with them anyway. And you'd hope now that maybe he gets a bit of minutes, maybe Carabao, maybe FA Cup before he potentially heads out on loan in January. He'll have been looking at what Dane has been doing. I'm so happy what's happened with Dane Scarlett. Just he was working so hard in the early games, but the goal wasn't coming. And as soon as the goal came, it was like bang. And Danny Cowley, I've said this before, Danny Cowley I know from having reported way back in my non-league days on Braintree, where he used to be the manager, and I know how good he is with young players. And just to hear the words of him, like he's using words like privilege. He feels privileged to be coaching someone like Dane Scarlett because he knows what a superstar is going to be. So it's really exciting. And maybe that's something to also look at. I wouldn't imagine maybe so for Conte, although Conte has bigged up Dane Scarlett massively and said what a future he's got. But I do wonder whether there's also this feeling at Spurs of, do we want to put someone in the to block the path of a Dane Scarlett? You know, like I say, I'm sure Conte doesn't particularly care about that aspect. I'm sure he's more about the now. But I wonder whether behind the scenes at the club, they're thinking, Dane Scarlett, just goes on this ridiculous scoring run. Like Danny Cowley thinks he's going to score ridiculous amounts in this league this season. Maybe he comes back and next season he's ready. Maybe excuse me. Maybe he's ready for something much bigger. He will be turning 19 by the time he comes back. Who knows? Honestly, I don't think people kind of understand just how exciting a player that Dane Scarlett is, and just how good he is. I think it's one of those where people have kind of seen him probably in the the Nuno games. They've seen him in and stuff like that, which just obviously did a massive disservice to him and lack of service and things like that. It's going to be a star. As long as he can keep his head down, steer clear of injury, he's going to be a star. He's going to be a player that, if I'm still doing this in a couple of years' time, we'll be talking about him, I think, as a real Premier League star. And, don't take my word for it. Conte's been saying this, Mourinho's been saying this, and these are guys that don't always look to the youth. That's not fair. They look to youth, but maybe you're more likely to hear them big up the now players. So to hear managers like that who have won it all, bigging up players like that, you know how good he's going to be. So I just wonder whether there's an element to that. I don't know. That could be. It's just me spitballing, a very tired man whose throat is now going, presumably because of the air conditioning and the airplane for 8.5 hours or so. What else do I want to talk about? Probably contracts now. I think now they've got the signings out of the way, I think you'll see them start to put their attention to those new contracts. Like we say, I'm sure Harry Kane, his view won't have changed that, club are moving in the right direction. I'm sure he'll be happy to sit down and discuss terms if the club would come to him. Eric Dyer, you'd imagine he seems pretty happy now as well. He's got only a couple of years left as well. So maybe you tie those up. And there's a couple of others there that would be interesting to see what they do. I think obviously Lucas Moura, you'd think he will head towards the end of that and go back to Brazil. It kind of sounds like that's his plan from what he set out in Korea to us. Davinson Sanchez, does the club renew that? Does he go on to, I guess, maybe go and be first choice week in, week out somewhere else? Be interesting to see. But I do think we'll get contracts now that will start to be tied up and sorted out. And now you know where the finances are, where the budgets are, what the salary, the wage budget looks like, and everything. You can then, I guess, commit to that sort of stuff. And some of those, especially Kane, obviously would be a big contract. Will be the biggest in the history of the club, you'd imagine. So I think we've kind of covered everything that I probably could have said about the transfer window and the different facets of it. And like I say, I know some people aren't happy with it. I know some people are happy with it. Probably somewhere in the middle. Could have been more, but ultimately it's a better squad. I'd say a much better squad than the one they ended the window with. They ended last season with. And that's shown by the amount. How many players did I say had gone out the door? Let me just count these up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 players there. Obviously, I'm including Kian Tete there, who wasn't really around the first team squad. And sorry, I should have said, when I was saying about Dane Scarlett coming back, Troy Parrott has designs on coming back and becoming a first team star as well. So don't count him out either. He could have a big season as well. But when you let that amount of players come out, go out, and then the 7 or 6 coming in, clearly quality-wise, they feel they've improved it, and I can't disagree with that. Obviously, I was disappointed with Bergwijn going out. I still believe. Well, I think he's doing very well with Ajax. It's a difficult one to judge because he's been there, done that, bought the t-shirt in the Eredivisie, so he is going to absolutely smash that league. I still believe he'll come back to the Premier League one day with someone, just to kind of, I suppose, to show that he can be a star, I guess, in that league. But other than that, I think the squad is a much, you're unlikely to see a situation where there's 4 or 5 youth academy products on the bench because there's nobody else. They'll be brought in at the right time, and they'll be on there because Conte was willing to play them. And now you've got Hill is back now. Lucas obviously will be back from his injury as well, and then the attacking options on the bench look a bit better. Because when they do, you have 3 different attacking options. Obviously, when you lose 2 of those, suddenly there's 1, and that's maybe the area where maybe another body. But Conte always says he wants 2 players for every position. He does have that right now with Tanganga and Hill sticking around. So the matches themselves, yes. So Forest obviously 2-0. I saw the highlights. Harry Kane's scuff shot. And that header from Richarlison was lovely outside of the foot cross. That was very nice as well. I also saw all the kerfuffle. There's a word you don't hear much. Kerfuffle about Richarlison's little keepy-uppy moment. I don't know. I just saw it. I was a bit like, really? We're having this big old hoo-ha about that for nothing. I didn't really see that as that bad. It's a flair player. Flair players show bits of flair. Did I think it was particularly disrespectful? I don't think so. He got clattered for it anyway, didn't he? It's kind of not to say that it balanced out or anything because it wasn't a pleasant challenge, but I just don't think it was that big a deal. I think it seemed to get made into it in the aftermath. And then, if anything, all it's done is solidified Richarlison in that moment, I think, as a fan favourite at Spurs already, because he absolutely took what they said and just had a laugh about it. And I think the way that the fans took to that, they loved it. And obviously what's happened since, he's swiftly becoming one of the most popular players at the club already, and that's inside and out. They love him inside the club, they really do. You can see that the players and the staff think he's great as well. He's a good influence on that dressing room. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes how people outside the game maybe judge certain players from what they see on a football pitch. Maybe like when he used to sulk a little bit when he'd come off, he'd want to stay on the pitch at Everton and stuff like that. But anyone who spoke to in Everton said he was the best influencer behind the scenes ever in the way he was with people. And just how his kind of drive and his will to win, and also just being a generally happy person. That's exactly what they're saying at Spurs. I think he's only solidifying himself in that. West Ham, I didn't really see much of this at all. The 1-1, I've obviously seen the goals. Obviously an own goal in that one. Those 2 games weren't the greatest displays of. I can understand why. I guess he said it was that people are a little bit worried after those about the lack of, I guess, attacking ability, creativity, creating chances, things like that. But 4 points from the 2 games early in the season. I think you take that, but especially in a London derby away as well. It's not the most horrendous result in a place where Spurs have had their struggles at times. But like I say, I can't really comment because I haven't seen too much on them. So, but Guesty said, to be fair, Guesty said they weren't creating much as well. So that's going to happen with Conte's system at times, purely because if the wing backs aren't on it, that's going to be a main avenue. And on top of that, the backup, obviously, for the wing backs is those the front three doing their thing. And if they're not doing it as well, that will play its role. Fulham, from what I saw, like I say, I saw a good probably 50 minutes or so, 55 minutes or so of it. It looked a lot better to me. Guesty, who was there, said it was a lot better. And from what I could see, when he said the scoreline flattered Fulham, could have been a hell of a lot more for Spurs. Obviously, it was a really nice move for Højbjerg's goal, with a low shot at the end, and then Kane tapping in from Ryan Sessegnon's persistence. Ryan Sessegnon was an interesting one because those at the game I spoke to, as in journos, thought he did well. Not brilliant, but did well. And I saw, I did look at social media after that one because I tweeted something. And there's a lot of people really slating Ryan Sessegnon. And for me, from what I saw of it, it was a 21, 22-year-old's performance. There were some silly errors. There were some silly, sloppy moments. But I also think that a lot of what he did in his drive and determination down that flank also played its part in creating big chances. Obviously, created the goal for Kane. His persistence in getting through there and his attacking that back post. And also, obviously, although it was judged offside, setting up Richarlison as well for what should have been his first, well, would have been his first goal if he wasn't offside. So yeah, I you know what I'm like when people kind of have a go at people on social media. I'm not a massive fan of it, and especially when they're young players. Conte's a big fan of Sessegnon. He believes he can be the future. I think he'll see him and Udogie as being the long-term future at Tottenham. I say it a million times, I'm sorry to bore those who listen to these and watch these, but Sessegnon is can be the perfect Conte wingback because he was a winger who also grew up playing fullback. So it's just about belief with him. That's all it is, belief in his body, but also the belief to continuously drive at that post, that touchline, and at the back post to try and get on the end of stuff on the other side, because we're seeing him make contributions. We are, and that's a massive step up. And even Perisic, he will learn every single day from that man. Perisic, I think we're starting to see more of the Perisic that we know, and there's some rumblings from Italy that Inter are not particularly delighted at the decision to kind of let him go, whoever decided that there, because they're kind of missing him. I think he's looking like the real deal now, which is fantastic. And I think my tweet was something like, I think they'll complement each other nicely, because Perisic won't be able to play every single game. He's a very fit man, but he'll be 34 his next birthday, and is it February? I'm trying to remember when his birthday is. But he'll need to be rotated to keep him fresh. And I think with him and Sessegnon, you've got two different kind of players. Perisic, Conte said, is one of the world's best in that position. And I think Sessegnon, if he just continues to learn from him, Spence as well. Perisic has been spending time with both of them, talking to them about stuff. I think they can really, really be something special. And obviously you've got a doggy to throw into that mix as well. So, yeah, I don't like to see young players being kind of pile on with them, I guess. Because I think you could see in these performances under Conte, you can see the seeds of the development that Sessegnon's going through. Like I say, he's going to make silly mistakes sometimes with his decisions. That's what young players do. That's what they've got to get out of this. They've got to learn what is the right thing to do in certain scenarios. And he will. And I really think he will. And we'll see the same process, hopefully, with Spence as he continues to become a Premier League player. Yeah, so that was that game. I watched pretty much the bulk of the Marseille game, which was... I wish I'd watched more of the Fulham game, to be honest with you. It wasn't great. I do think Spurs definitely got off the hook a bit with the red card, which I don't think there were any complaints about. Do feel Sonny seems to have kicked on a little bit and back up to where we know he can be in the last 2 games. Guesty told me, especially the full game against Fulham, he was much brighter. And Marseille obviously had that moment. He's still having his little confidence moment, Sonny, but where he's looks a little low on confidence, but that will come back. Of course it will. Just needs a really good goal. I think that'll do it. But yeah, of course, it was all about Richarlison against Marseille. His ability in the air, that's going to be huge kind of thing. And that's why you can see him as this, he can play the Kane role as well, or essentially can play the front man, the lone striker role if required as well, because physical presence, he's got it. Both his headers were beautiful. One terrific cross. I hope people really notice how good both crosses were as well. I know Perisic, because he is absolutely and rightly one of the flavours of the moment right now, because he's really coming on strong now. His cross was terrific, but also I hope Højbjerg's cross gets a lot of praise as well. I didn't look at stuff around the game, but I hope it did, because that in itself was a lovely one. And someone like De Bruyne or Eriksen or anyone like that had picked Richarlison out with that cross, and they would have got a lot more praise, or a lot of praise. I don't know, to be honest, whether Højbjerg did or not. I'm only imagining. Because of sometimes the way he splits the fan base. Well, that was quite interesting. I saw one of the transcripts he put out that Conte was asked that question by someone about Højbjerg splitting the fan base, and he was like, "Well, I'm not splitting any way about him. He's a terrific player. He's exactly what I need." And he kind of went through all his pluses and what he's about and how he is trying to improve on the ball. And I think we're seeing that. We're seeing goals. We're seeing assists. I honestly, I don't think you can moan too much about Højbjerg at the moment. Yes, of course, he will be a player that will occasionally play a sideways pass that might frustrate. He will be a player that maybe misplaces a pass, but others will do that as well. Bentancur will do that. He'll play risky passes at sometimes, but Bentancur was very good against Fulham. He was excellent against Fulham. He'll only get stronger and stronger the more he adapts to the Premier League as well. But yeah. I was going to get away from Richarlison. I can't get away from Richarlison that quickly. Richarlison was he's going to be such a big player for Spurs this season. You can see it. And this is the beauty of it, as well. I don't think Kane's been scoring, obviously, but I still don't think we've seen the heights of Kane, doing the playmaker role as well. Sonny obviously hasn't been quite where he's been at, obviously Golden Boot winner last season, and yet to score a goal. But he will, of course, he'll come back, and the moment you doubt Sonny is when he will absolutely smash back to form. And Kulusevski, obviously Kulusevski taken out the squad the team for the last 2 games. And I feel he's responded really positively each time he's kind of come into the fray. So I do think, and this is with no disrespect to Lucas, because I do think Lucas, and of course you've got to include Bayern Gil in this as well. It would have been Bergwijn last season. I feel like Richarlison pushes those 3 a little bit more than a Lucas does. Lucas is obviously, I think, will be a really good impact player this season. Of course, they will rotate and he will play games. I just feel Richarlison is just maybe that extra level on. And that's reflected in his price. He's a £60 million player. And I think anyone like the pundits who are questioning why they needed to sign him, I think this is exactly why they need to sign him. It's that ability to, said it a million times, as Conte said, to be able to bring either or in and not worry about a dip in the quality. So yeah, it's terrific. And I love the moment he shared with his dad after the game, because he did, and Conte spoke about it afterwards. When he first came, he said, since I was a kid, I just hear that Champions League music and I dream of it. And then to make your Champions League debut and to score 2 brilliant goals, I love that he went over and got so emotional with his dad. It was just a moment you could see. He was already emotional, I think, and then he just had that moment where they looked at each other, and there's the rest of his family members there as well, and it was just like, everything in his career had been building to that moment. It was beautiful. It's lovely. That's the kind of stuff that football can throw up. Those really nice moments as well. So yeah, I think the key with where Spurs are at right now is that, well, you only need to look at the matches. Unbeaten. They return to the Champions League with 3 points. Yes, of course, they're helped by the red card, but that is part of a game. That's what happens. And they're 3rd in the Premier League table. And all of that despite really hitting their stride yet. They've only shown little glimpses. And, it's a cliche, but that's what the better teams do. The big teams do. They win games or they don't lose them when they're not particularly at their best. And it was a big thing last season with Conte saying, if you're not going to win it, make sure you don't lose it. And, they've had a couple of draws in there. But they are where they are. I mean, I was looking at the league table before I did this, and that Arsenal team right now being hailed as the best thing since sliced bread. They're a point ahead of Spurs. 1 point. That's it. And obviously, you do wonder if Spurs had been given all that praise, and then obviously in their first major test had lost it. Was it United game? I think Spurs would have got a lot of I'm not doing a Cilla Black impression there. Got a lot of flack for that. Whereas it'd be interesting to see now what happens with Arsenal and how they kick on from that. Obviously, I know they're the European game, the Europa League match, but it'd be interesting to see kind of when they have the next test what they do, because I don't deny at all that Arsenal I think have done some good things in the transfer window as well. But it's all about fixing issues in your team, whether that's mentality, whether that's players, whatever it is. And I'd be intrigued to see kind of where they go from here. And because obviously they've been getting a lot of praise. But yes, the first test, and you could argue all day over whether, United deserve to win that or not. It's one of those where I'm sure, as Jose Mourinho used to say, you can have all the possession you want in the world, but if you, put that ball in the net, that's it. That's the key thing. So Spurs, I think it's a really good sign that they haven't really clicked entirely yet. Yet they're third in the table, haven't lost a game yet. I think that can only be seen as a good thing. And the new recruits are only going to adapt even further and better as they get on. And I think it is Basuma. We haven't really spoken about him much yet because I guess he was telling me his debut was his full debut was at West Ham. This is the trouble with not really seeing much of the games. I think it was West Ham because it wasn't. Didn't Bentancur have did he take a bang to his head? I'm trying to remember what game that was. I'm sure you'll all tell me in the comments repeatedly below, which is absolutely fine. It's very nice of you to tell me. But otherwise, I was told that Basuma wasn't particularly great, but then I don't think many were in that performance. But also, Basuma's just got to know exactly what Conte wants. It's going to be different to what he's been used to. And I think the moment you see him start to click, those forwards, and with Skippy, honestly, you know what I think of Skippy, and I think he's going to have a big season as well. People kind of forget what he's going to bring to the team. This is that moment where that guy in the YouTube comments every single week, whenever I mention Skippy, goes, Skippy watch, and he puts the time. I've said him, although I think I mentioned him earlier. There's so many options. There's so many players that can come in and do a job. I wouldn't worry or fret at all. It's really interesting. It's just really interesting kind of looking at it all from afar, and having missed out on the whole I guess the frustrations I'm sure there were at the end of the transfer window because people weren't being signed in those final days and it was more about the outgoings. I think overall Spurs are in a stronger position. I think that's why we're seeing this start to the season. Of course, they've got fortunate in some moments. Of course, they have. But that's football. Everyone does. Everyone needs that little bit of the rub of the green sometimes. Man City have played some matches that they haven't won this season. When they still needed that rub of the green to win the game. However many times however much you throw at the opposition. I'm intrigued to see how it shakes up with other clubs as well. You're obviously United finding a little bit of stride now, despite all the criticism they would get. Obviously Liverpool having some tough times as well. We've seen what's happened with Chelsea as well. I think Graham Potter, I'm really intrigued to see what happened. I really like Graham Potter. He was up there with my kind of picks for the whole manager debacle of last summer. I don't know if it was him or Ten Hag. I'd have been quite happy with either of those. So yeah, how he does at Chelsea is going to be really interesting. He's one of those where, and I kind of wondered this about Ten Hag as well, whether Spurs actually would have been a better next step club than the clubs they've gone to. I think the key for Potter is essentially how much Chelsea and the players buy into his philosophy, because he's got a very set way of doing things. And as long as there's no egos in there who look at him as like, well, what have you won kind of thing. But if they all buy into it, they could be really, really effective. But also, it's how long does that philosophy take to embed, I guess? How quickly does that? So definitely, if Spurs can get consistency, if Spurs can maintain their course right now, and obviously improve performances as well, the rotation element brings just the strong performances, whoever's in there. There's a lot of clubs that are on a little bit of uncharted territories, I guess is probably the way to put it. Whereas Spurs could, Chelsea, yes, they spent a hell of a lot of money, but there's a lot of players that need to gel. I know Conte was asked something about that, and he said, look, if you bring in £100 million player in the last few days of the window, you've still brought in a brilliant player. It doesn't matter when you brought him in, which is true. But they still need to gel. They still need to adapt to the Premier League or the team or whatever. And now they've got Potter, the whole squad's going to have to adapt. He could instantly bed in, and he could be fantastic from this point on. He's a very talented coach, so he may well do that. But I wouldn't be surprised to see if we're kind of talking about this maybe as the World Cup hits, and Spurs are still up there, and they're doing good things. We'll see. Very exciting stuff. Oh yes. So I was going to say about the City game not happening. It's one of those you can take it both ways, really. Whether Conte and the team will see, obviously, the tragic circumstances of why it happened, but whether they look at the City game now not happening this weekend, I suppose you could look at it the pros in terms of from a sporting perspective of it slightly opens up a little gap between these games. Obviously, that will come back to bite you at some point whenever they have to fit it in. But then maybe playing City earlier in the season, is that a better thing or not? I don't know. They went to the Etihad later in the season last season, and it was absolutely fine. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know is the answer. I don't think there's probably, a right or wrong answer. I don't think there's a way to take it. Yeah, it's kind of up to you. Let me know your opinions underneath. Do you think it's going to benefit Spurs not playing that game now? Maybe, I guess, Spurs haven't hit their stride, maybe. So maybe it wouldn't have been a great time to play them. I don't know. But then defensively, what they conceded, only a couple of goals in those last 4 matches. Romero back, which was great to see as well. Although Davinson Sanchez, I wonder whether he would have been thinking to himself, Romero came back in and they conceded a goal. It was actually, Romero wasn't, I'm remembering now, Romero wasn't great for that Mitrovic goal either. He was, he looked like a bit of a rusty player, he did, but he's fantastic. He'll be brilliant anyway. Sporting, obviously, now. Marcus Edwards, obviously, I think he's got a goal and assist, didn't he, in the first round in the Champions League. Fantastic to see what he's doing. Interesting to see how he plays against his old side as well. They'll be, he'll want to have his say on the game. Of course he will. He'll want to make an impact and show Tottenham what they kind of missed out on. I think it's fantastic to see him. I've written so much about Marcus over the years and watched him play all kinds of academy football when he was young as well. I think it's absolutely brilliant that he is now kind of just found his way. It's brilliant. Sometimes young players just have to do that. I think he admitted himself in an interview, there's a growing up process. Of course there is. We've all been there. We've all been young kids and maybe had to just get our heads focused exactly on where we want to go and how we want to do it. And I think from what I understand, some good people around him now as well, which helps. I'm not saying there were bad people around him before, but just maybe he's just got a little bit more experience around him now and the people that are working with him. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does, and obviously for Spurs, they want to kind of keep this momentum going in this group now, have a better performance. Be intrigued to see how he goes with the lineup. Obviously now there'll have been a week. It was the Wednesday game, wasn't it? So 6-day gap rather than it would have been a proper turnaround team. So it'd be interesting to see how Conte adjusts to that, and how he does that. And obviously with Leicester, we'll see what happens with that exactly. I'll be honest, literally I've stepped out of an airport and came in here and I thought I'll do a video for you guys and girls. So I don't really know where the land lies with next weekend. I'd imagine, it sounds like for the early things I was hearing about other games of football look to be back on this week and next weekend. So you'd think it'll be on. I think there's a policing aspect to it from what I read in one thing on the... Well, I was waiting in the airport, so whether they are able to get it reversed, I don't know. Can they play at the King Power Stadium instead? I don't know. We'll find out more about those in the days ahead, but ultimately now it's about going to Lisbon and getting a result out there, and that'll be a good game, I think, for the fans as well. It'll be interesting to see what the other away games are like for the fans. Yeah, there's obviously, I saw some of the scenes of some of the Marseille game fans after that game. I think unfortunately, I just wonder whether for those away games and maybe Frankfurt can. There's been some stories about. I don't know. We'll see. I think it's just best to see what happens. But there's going to be some experiences. I just hope that I get to write at these Champions League games just about the games, and there's nothing else going on behind the scenes at all. But yeah. Right, I'm going to go off now. I'm going to try and stay awake for a few more hours and then head off to Lisbon tomorrow for the press conference, which obviously will bring you everything he says. I think they're training at Hotspur Way in the morning, and then the press conference is late in the evening, Lisbon time, early evening. So, yeah, I'll be there back to put the questions to Conte. It feels like an age since I've done that. It feels like a long, long time since I've asked Conte any questions. It would have been, when did I go? 25th. So just before that would have been the last one. That's a long time. We're pushing almost 3 weeks, that'll have been. So, yeah. I've probably forgotten who I am, but there you go. Right. So I think that's everything. Apologies if slightly knackered and made little sense. Apologies if I rambled a bit. And yeah, it was just essentially me getting my head around various things that have happened while I've been away and across the world. But all still good at Tottenham by the looks of it. Certainly nothing negative appears to happen there while I've been away, which is always good. And hopefully this week will bring some more positives as well for Spurs. There you go. Right, going to head off now. You can see I'm flagging. I'm absolutely flagging now. My brain is struggling to process logical thoughts. So, yeah, I'm going to head off. So, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.